2008 BMW 328i starter replacement. I'm Brian Essick from How To Automotive, and I'm going to walk you through the process. So the first step is to remove the battery cable, the negative battery cable. So on this one, it's a wagon, so I flip the floorboard up like so. Right here, there's two of these little screws. You turn them 90 or quarter turn, and they pop out, and then you lift up from the bottom, pull this panel off. Now you're going to take right here, you're going to turn these quarter turn, and this panel pops off. Now you can get to your negative battery cable and disconnect. So the starter motor is underneath the intake manifold. So what we need to do to get access to this is we need to remove this cowling cover here where the cabin filter is, and remove this top engine cover. So we'll start by removing the 8mm screws around the cabin air filter. Okay, after removing the cabin air filter, next we're going to remove this wire loom here. This holds the battery cables that go to the alternator and to the starter itself. So we're going to pop this off. Under here, what you do is you take a little screwdriver and you pry the little tabs down here and here and here, and then you should be able to slide the whole thing out. And then there's another wire loom behind it, and the same thing, it has a little. So these are free now. You just leave them sitting on top of the engine right here. The next thing is we're going to remove the two covers on each side of the cowling here. To do that, there's little rubber grommets. You're going to push those out of the way. Push those out of the way. And then on the back side, there's a little ear. Flip that up a little bit. One here, front side right here, and we have to get a little screwdriver. Pry that one up, and then the whole cover will come off. You'll do that on both sides. Next, on the driver's side here, there's a little wire loom here. You need to pry it off this little perch it's sitting on. Set that aside. And then you take this 8mm bolt out of here on the corner. And then on the passenger side, you're going to take the ambient air temperature sensor. You're going to turn it quarter turn like that and pull it out, and then take the wiring off the perch. So set that aside and take the 8mm bolt off. Next, on each side, there's a little rubber grommet. Hand back so you can see on each side. So remove that, and once you get that removed on both sides, the whole cowling will come out. So you lift it out and set aside. So now we're going to remove the top engine cover, and there's 4 screws on it here, there, and one underneath the wiring right here, and they're 5mm Allens. Remove all of those. So now we're going to remove the intake manifold. We're going to remove the 11mm bolts here. We're also going to unplug the oil pressure switch, unplug it, remove the 11mm bolts and nuts all the way across to the back. So now that you got the nuts and the bolts off, you'll need a E6 female Torx bit. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the 3 studs that hold the intake on. So we're going to remove all 3 of these. So now that you got the studs and the bolts removed, the intake is pretty much off. Sometimes it'll adhere itself to the cylinder head, and you have to pry it off a little bit. Now, to make a little bit more room to pry this back, we're going to remove the 2 tins here that hold the reservoir for the power steering, and we're just going to set that out aside. Okay, to make a little bit more room, we're going to remove our air box here. So you're going to remove the 2 tins here, your air cleaner out of your power steering reservoir out of the way. And then you get to the hose clamp there, take it off right here. Take the hose clamp off there. And on the front here, you're going to take a couple Torx off for the snorkel. Okay, so I have the bolts out here and here on the front. So that will remove the snorkel out. So wiggle it here and separate it here. And once it's separated and you get your mass air also unplugged, the whole air cleaner assembly will just slide out. So as you can see, the whole thing comes out as one assembly. And now you can actually see the starter motor. So now you're going to disconnect unplug the wiring from it. So the electrical connector is just a little squeeze tab. You just push in and pull out, and then you'll remove the 13mm nut holding the battery cable. Okay, so after getting the battery cable off and the electrical connector unplugged, we need to remove the 2 bolts that hold the starter on itself. Now when you order your your starter, you need to order new bolts for it because these are made out of aluminum. They're one-time use only. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the top bolt off first. So the top bolt comes from the back of the transmission in like this. So I'm using my new starter here to give you a demonstration. So the easiest way I found to get to this bolt is what you do is you pull the intake out as far as you can and pull it forward a little bit. But you also want to be careful with this hose here. This hose is part of the PCD system, and you don't want to break this hose. It can be fragile. If you're afraid of it, you can disconnect it right here. It has a little squeeze tab and it pulls off. So the actual bolt for it is an E14 female Torx, like so. But what I found the easiest way to get to them is to take an 11mm wrench, like so, a 12 with a 12-point socket, and it fits perfectly in there. And these don't have very much torque on them because they're made out of aluminum, so they're not very tight. So down here at the bottom, there's just enough room to get your hand and the wrench in there. Once you crack it free, you can get your hand all the way down there, and you can spin the bolt off by hand. Okay, with that bolt off, next we need to get the bolt that's on the it'll be on the driver's side of the car, the left side of the car. We need to get to this bolt, and that one comes from this way in. So what I like to use is a semi-wobble socket like so. And you slide it up underneath, down below you'll do it. Slide it underneath like this, and you can use an air ratchet, and you'll take it off, and you'll use the E14 socket for that. So you can see my extension down there on it, and also if you look up through the intake manifold, you can actually see the nut and bolt right there. So they help guide it on. And like I said, they don't have very much torque on them, so you can probably get it free with a ratchet. So now the starter's free and ready to come out. You just wiggle it out, and when you get up to this point, it'll just slide out right here. So when pulling the starter out, right down here is the crank sensor for the car. So you want to be careful not to nick the wiring right there. Be careful. So and also be careful not to snag the knock sensor wiring right there. So it comes out pretty easily. So now we're ready to put the new starter back in. Remember to order your bolts with it. So we'll position the starter in, slip it in back the way we came out, and we'll start the lower bolt first. Okay, so I got the new starter in there, and I got a piece of paper and I stuffed it in the E14 socket, and then stuck the new bolt in it. And that way, when you work around, you'll hold it in place. So I'm gonna start the bottom bolt. And we're gonna run it into it snug, but we're not gonna torque it just yet. Okay, now that bolt's in, we're gonna take our new bolt, the top bolt. So the way I get it is I hold it in my left hand like so, and you slip it underneath the transmission like so, and then you're able to slide it in like that. And then once it's in, you can push it in and start the bolt. Now the new bolt's in all the way. I'm going to use my 11 millimeter wrench here with the 12-point socket. I'm going to snug it up tight. So I'm going to tighten it. So you're going to do it until it touches, and then you just have to do it by feel. You can feel it tight. You do not want to over tighten this because it will snap off. Just tighten it till it touches, and then give it maybe like a quarter more turn or so, and that's about as tight as you need it. You don't need it super tight. Okay, now that the top bolt is tight, go ahead and tighten up your bottom bolt. And then after that, you can put your battery cable back on and tighten that down, and then re-plug in the electrical connector for the igniter wire for the starter. So now that the starter's done on that part of it, now what we need to do is we need to change all of our seals here. So you're going to order up some new seals. They're just O-rings, a bag of O-rings, and change all 6 of the O-rings. So you'll just maneuver the intake around however you have to do it to get to each one, and they just push in. That's it. So once you get all the seals replaced, before we put the intake back on, what I'm going to recommend you do is you're going to take a flashlight and look down all the ports and make sure that no debris fell in on top of the valves. If anything fell in or got in the way, now is the time to get it. So now that you've changed the O-rings, now you just kind of put your intake back into place. What I like to do is start this corner first with the 11mm bolt, and then after that, with your right hand, you'll hold the intake up in the back, and you'll put your studs back in, and you'll start your studs. So after starting all the bolts, you want to snug up the Torx, the studs first, and then put all your nuts on. And then what you're going to do is you're going to torque these down you're going to start from the middle, and then you'll go this one, and you kind of work in a pattern, like back and forth pattern from the inside out, and you're going to torque them down to approximately 11 foot-pounds, or 15 Newton meters, or if you're using an inch-pound, I believe it's like around 130 inch-pounds. Now that the intake is torqued back down, you want to replug your oil pressure switch in, like so. Position your power steering reservoir in the way, and put your mass airflow wiring out of the way where you can find it. It's time to reinstall the air box now. So you're going to install the inlet boot in nose first, like that. And once you get it into position, you go ahead and put your bolts back in here. So when you go to put your throttle back over the throttle body there, you want to grab it with both hands and push it on, kind of like wrap your hands around it, kind of like you're choking somebody's neck, and push it on. Really, it's pretty snug fit, so you'll push it on and then tighten your hose clamp. After you got that, now you can actually put your power steering reservoir back in place and tighten the two tins here, and then we'll put the snorkel on. Okay, now that you got your air box reassembled, your reservoir back installed, your mass airflow sensor plugged back in, the air snorkel back on. Now what I like to do is reconnect the battery cable and tighten it. Now, before I put any covers back on or anything like that, start the car. So now that you got the car started and running, you want to double check real quick before vacuum leaks. Everything checks out good, then shut the car off, reinstall your engine covers and your cowling, and you're done. Next step is to put your engine cover back on, tighten the 4 or 5mm Allens down, and after that we'll put the cowling back on. So now we're going to put the cowling back on. What we're going to do is, they have these little catches right here, and those slide underneath like so. So you'll slide with the tail facing downward first, like so, and then slide it up and under. Now that it's back into place, start your 8mm bolts, and then one on each corner, and put your rubber grommets back in for your rubber boot here, one on each side. Now you want to put these covers on. You just line them over at the top and snap them on, and don't forget to tuck your rubber boot, the grommet back in. After that, you're going to do that on each side. After that, you're going to take your ambient air temperature sensor and line it up with the little hashtag slots. Kind of line them in like so, and then you'll turn it clockwise until they lock into position, and then reattach the little wiring to the purchase. Just push down on them, and that's it. And do that on both sides. Now we're going to reinstall the cabin air filter. If this is dirty, now is the time to change it. So you just put that cover back on like so, and put your 8mm screws back in. Okay, now that the cabin air filter is back into place, now we're going to put the wiring harness back on. So you'll take the wiring harness part first and put them on like so. Slip those on, and then you'll take the battery cable one and you'll line up all three of the tabs like so, and push on until it locks into place. And that completes the job of replacing the starter on your BMW 328. I'm Brian Essick from How To Automotive, and I'd like to encourage you to subscribe for more valuable videos like this. And thank you guys so much for watching my videos.